Hello, welcome everyone, and happy Women's Day. We are just going to start our today's talk session, and we are so glad to have you all here. Let me introduce myself. I am Noreen Kia, and I am from Seattle. I am a transportation engineer working at HDR in Bellevue office for the past 3.5 years. So I will be the facilitator today for this session, and let's see how it goes. Okay, so we are actually so glad to have you all here joining us today on this very special day that is International Women's Day. And today we are going to discuss a very time-appropriate topic and which is very essential. That is how the pandemic is changing work policies for women. We are all eagerly waiting to hear from all of you about your experiences, insights, and stories. Imagine a gender equal world where the world is free of any kind of stereotypes, bias, or discrimination, a world where differences are valued and celebrated all together. So this year, the campaign theme of International Women's Day is break the bias in the communities and in the workplaces and in societies so that women can equally contribute and participate in all of the things. Also, United Nations theme for 2022 International Women's Day is gender equality today for a sustainable tomorrow, to recognize the contribution of women and girls from all over the world who are working on the fact of the climate change to build a more sustainable future for all of us. Today, we come together to celebrate all the women and their contributions and to discuss some of their real-life challenges. In past 2 years, pandemic and work from home situation has affected women's professional and personal life in so many ways. Women are literally juggling to balance between work and their personal life to take care of the families and children and whatnot. So let's start our today's topic, and we are going to discuss basically how work from home has impacted women's professional life and career growth, how male parents and policymakers are understanding the caregiving struggles of the women, what have we learned for future from the past 2 years of these pandemic scenarios, and what are some great tips that work for women to shine in their career during this situation. Spreeha is proud to be able to bring some industry leaders today into this discussion to see how they are coping with these issues in their leadership. Today we have our speaker, Snigdha. She's the program officer of Gates Foundation. She manages initiatives for advancing financial inclusion in Bangladesh with a special focus on increasing women's access to financial products and services. Prior to joining Gates Foundation, she worked as a researcher and development practitioner at World Bank, Bangladesh, IFPRI, and has more than 12 years of experiences in gender research and management. We also have our panelists today with us. We have Tanim Mirza, engineering leader, Amazon SageMaker machine learning platform at AWS, Dilshad Akhtar, principal software engineering manager at Microsoft, Sarah Ahmed, senior human resource business partner at AWS, Farah Farzana, principal engineering manager at Microsoft, and Michael Chalve, director of innovation tech for social impact at Microsoft Philanthropies. He's also a board member of Spreeha. So today, at first, our speaker and the panelists will share their insights and experiences and thoughts with us, and then we will open the platform for an open discussion and any question answer session that will, and you can also have, if you have any question during these speeches, you can also leave your question in the comment box and we will try to address those while we progress, but we highly encourage you to actively participate in the open discussion. So let's start with our speaker. Snigdha, please take the floor to share your perspective and insights with us.
Thank you, Noreen, and thanks to Spreeha for arranging this community conversation as a platform to share.
and thanks for giving me the opportunity. We are here to talk about how the pandemic has changed work policies for women. Let me begin with a small note that even if tapering down, the pandemic is still very much a present phenomenon. So we are yet to know the full impact of this on almost all aspects of our macro and micro experiences, like from the economy, employment, price index, health budget, to the health and hygiene practices in everyday lives, to dynamics of social groups, to work culture, and to how women in particular cope and adjust. In terms of change in work policy for women, there was none that was specifically geared towards women. This was or is a global crisis impacting everyone. And the first measures to address and mitigate such a problem was gender neutral and generic. However, nothing is gender neutral and nothing is generic. The policies may be theoretically, but not in its implications. We all know that the most drastic change in work policies was working from home and, in some cases, digitized, touchless salary disbursements. The work from home situation, we all kind of are very familiar with, aware of, and I'm sure the other panelists will shed more light on it from their personal experiences or others. I will focus here on the other aspect, but let me very briefly just mention one statistics. While working from home, just in Bangladesh, the workload for men increased 2%, and the workload for women has increased 60%, just from a recent study that has come out. Apart from that, another work-related policy that the Bangladesh government just kind of issued during the pandemic is this digitized touchless salary disbursement. And just to see how the same policy may have vastly different impacts depending on the context, let me explain a bit. Digitized salary, we all get paid electronically. But Bangladesh is a cash transaction heavy economy, and many receive salaries in the form of cash. If we take the case of a female garment worker in Bangladesh, and we know the garment sector is a major contributor to our GDP. So just let's take that sector and let's take a female garment worker as our example. She used to receive cash, but with the lockdown and the government circular to get them paid digitally through bKash or a Rocket account, for a few months, all the female garment workers, actually all garment workers, got their salaries deposited directly in their accounts. A study done by Business Social Responsibility shows that simply by getting the salaries in the account and not in hand as cash, women started saving. You'll ask how. It's simple. When they received the salaries as cash, all was spent because we all know that they come from a socioeconomically challenged group. So the need is always there. Whenever they receive the money in cash, all was spent. But when the same amount was deposited in their account, instead of getting all the cash out of the account, they made an estimate how much is required and take that amount out and leave some. This on involuntary savings accrued over time. It may be a very small amount, but a lot for a garment worker. The study also shows that these savings help those women gain confidence and exercise more decision-making power inside the household. We kind of know that many studies have shown that when women are given control of finances, economics, etc., they exert more decision-making power and overall the family benefits. However, it's not all a rosy picture. There's a flip side of it too. As we pretty much know, and when we talk about this year's International Women's Day's motto being break the bias, there are biases in all aspects of the society, right? Social norm is one big parameter to show that. We pretty much know it. In many cases, the women's income is taken over the husbands and controlled by them. Female garment workers often hide the amount of the overtime they get paid from the husbands. The salary is fixed and it's known to the husband, known to everybody. But the overtime varies depending on when she works, how long she works, etc. And that is something a female garment worker tries to have some control over. If she doesn't have the control over her own income, her own hard-earned salary, at least she has some control over the overtime by manipulation, by hiding, but does. But when the salary and overtime is deposited in the account, a text message comes to the mobile divulging the amount deposited, and the husband get to know the actual amount the wife is earning. This not only kind of fails the purpose of her trying to exert some control over her own income, but this may also lead to some household tension. It could lead to gender-based violence. It could lead to other aspects, other controlling measures. In other words, in addition to losing the control over the income, there's some extra burden that the woman faces. Now, coming to the work from home situation, we know that we know that the intra-household labor division falls very heavily on women. The economists measured the amount of the unpaid labor, the cost of the unpaid labor, to be, I don't know, I just saw a number with, I think, 8 or 9 zeros, so I don't know whether it's more than 1 billion, trillion, etc. It's huge all over globally, irrespective of the context, the society, the culture, the economy, whether it's a low and middle income countries, whether it's a developed economy, it's huge. Now with the pros of not having to commute to the workplace, not having to find alternate childcare, alternate elderly care, alternate other resources for the household chores, those are some of the positives that the women are facing for this work from home situation. The other, and the one that I just mentioned at the beginning, the disproportionate increase in household labor, responsibilities, chores is striking, especially in countries like ours, Bangladesh, or South Asian societies, or African societies. It's tremendous. At the same time, there is another fear that while, and we all know that already, that women face inequality, women face challenges in upward mobility in workplaces like promotions or leadership roles, etc. Along the same lines, there's another fear that's going on, is that if the work culture changes permanently and more employees work from home, meaning that they don't get to do some informal team building, informal rapport building at the workplace, eventually, will it contribute more towards creating bigger obstacles for women to come to the forefront in the leadership positions, in promotions, and etc.? It's not so black and white, but there's a real fear. What impact will it create for women? And as I'm saying, we are seeing some impact, some changes, good and bad, positive and negative, but we don't know yet what the world will be like once finally this pandemic is over and everything is settled down and cope to the new mode of life. The jury is still out there, but we can just hope that we can find some mechanisms to cope and adjust. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Snigdha. It was really great to hear lots of dimension of the pandemic and work from home. I actually never personally thought of that. Like you said, work from home may actually be an obstacle for being in the leadership position or to progress in career. Like, it was really great to hear. the perspective. Thank you so much. As our today's topic is how the pandemic is changing work policies for women, we would like to hear from our panelists now and would like to know how do they face the challenges in their team and how are they addressing those issues. So let's welcome Tani Mirza to share some thoughts and perspective of the situation. Tani Mirza bhai, the floor is yours.
You're on mute, Tanim.
Right. If I could find out how technology works. Yeah. So it's a really humbling moment for us. Like the last 2 years have been, anything but normal. Given all these things in there, I kind of feel like that all of us have experienced some changes that I'm pretty sure will stay forever. Especially coming back to today's topic, the how women and are accommodating or kind of adjusting to this change. It was good to hear some of the challenges that Snigdha brought up. But I personally would like focus on two things, I think. Number one, the biggest thing that I have seen in workplace is awareness and open discussion. We always knew, we always knew that women a lot of time faces a lot more challenges than the counterpart in the workplace. We always knew about it. We talked about it. We acknowledged it to some extent here and there. But the overall, the collective awareness and the ability to discuss this openly, I think that has opened up. What I have experienced at the workplace, this is a very, like it's not if, you don't have to have a formal discussions about it. I think that itself is a big progress. I believe this is kind of, we have a long way to go, but without discussion, without awareness, I know this path can be really, really longer. A specific item that I will call out what I have seen at workplace that really worked out to the benefit of women at work is this ability to work asynchronous way. We didn't know about this thing. Like we always thought that the most ways, the most productive way for people to work is 9 to 5. You get into the room and you do all those things together. That mental model, I think, has been broken, and we learned that yes, there is a lot of benefits when you interact, in a physical location, but it has nothing to do with the actual productivity of getting things done. So I observed that a lot of my colleagues and the people that I work with, they have taken up this opportunity to introduce this asynchronous work style. And I learned from them that this has been a very, very productive thing for them. I know a particular team member that I really work with. She has 3 young kids. And it happens to be her husband is a kind of a first responder. So she got the worst of both sides, like, because her husband needs to go out, provide services that she can avoid. At the same time, she has 3 kids that she needed to take care. And I saw her like really, really challenging us, like, describing what these challenges are and how she will come up with it. What I admired the most is she didn't look for permission. She said, if you want me to work, this is what I'm going to give you. This is how I'm going to work. And, matter of the fact that, we all feel a little bit embarrassed that we didn't come up with some ideas. And that's why, today is the day where we should be respecting that, this bold woman who are teaching us every day that how we don't necessarily think about these things. But she introduced some concept around asynchronous work, how that will work and that kind of stuff. And to be honest, many male counterpart in the workplace also taken advantage of it, because once you figure out how it works, once you have that kind of a leveling out these expectations across the team, it does create a safe environment where you could do these kind of things in there. So I brought it up in an example because that's one of the things that I think will stay long in our workplace. and I think he'll stay longer for better for both male and female. So I'm going to stop here. Any questions or anything that I can answer?
I guess we could go to the questions after we hear from all the panelists. So yeah, we'll definitely have a lot of questions.
Thank you, Tanim Mirza Bhai. It was really great to know that companies and leaderships are actually recognizing and actually started discussing about this struggle that women are going through literally. And the asynchronous concept, really, it is a very nice thing. And I'm sure there are lots of questions are coming in our way at the end. Thank you. So next, Dilshad Akhtar Apu, the floor is yours for next couple of minutes, and we would like to hear from you.
Thank you. Thank you, Nori. Thanks, Tanim. I want to a little bit double down on what Tanim said, the first point, that people are more aware. And from my perspective, I see that this time, the guys were also stuck at home with kids, whether they are the primary caregiver or if they have a non-working spouse or not, they are in it together. So everybody was in it together. So that's kind of level the playing field for everybody. So that's why I see that the guys and the leadership and everybody is getting more aware of the problem because they are facing it themselves, whether they are doing the majority of the work for childcare and all those things, because there is no daycare, no school, kids were at home. So whether they have a working spouse or not, they were also involved. So that empathy like grew all the leadership. And secondly, what happened as part of that in Microsoft, we have seen that they have started adding lots of benefits. Of course, the benefits is not for a certain gender that they cannot do, but they did the role-based benefit. And when they did the role-based benefit, many cases, the women plays the primary role for that. For example, they added benefit for childcare related. They added benefit for elderly care. You can take extra leave to take care of your child if they did not have daycare or they have some health issues. You could take get help, backup care. It used to be only for child, then they expanded. Oh, it can be for elderly care or somebody, your loved one is sick. You can take those benefit. They added benefit, and then the flexibility they added. It used to be people used to look down upon, oh, they are working from home or they are not that 9 to 5 role, but it became normal that every meeting is a Teams meeting. So that's why people can always participate no matter where they are. It used to be lots of people in the room, maybe 1 or 2 on the teams. So the people on the teams were not get as much of the experience and the participation. But now this teams is making people everybody has the same participation no matter where they are. So that also helping with that flexibility. So I think with this, as Snigdha also said, that this pandemic, even if we see tomorrow, poof, the pandemic is gone, we are not going back to the life we had before, because we have learned that we can work in a different way and still be very productive. Because if you look at this industry, the productivity actually went up because people are working wherever they want to, whenever they want to. And so they are more eager to do their work and be productive. At the same time, they can have their personal commitment met. So people are learning how to live in this new world. So I think this will be the new world, and we'll learn and we will adjust. And as the pandemic is hopefully wrapping up, we are starting to go back to life. I see that we are never gonna go back to the pre-pandemic life, but hopefully that will be the better future for all of us. Thank you. Any question? Maybe at the end. Thanks, Nori.
Thank you so much. Really, it was great to know that how that you say that productivity increased during even this pandemic and during this work from home situation. And I completely agree on that. People are more flexible and companies are agreeing on this flexibility. And I hope when we are back in the post-pandemic years, or when it will be definitely new normal, and hope this flexibility continues and this support continues. Thank you. So yeah, next we would like to hear from Sarah Ahmed. Sarah, over to you.
Let me unmute myself. Okay. I think the advantage of going after a couple of speakers is I think most of the key themes are already discussed. So I think what I'll say is going to echo a lot of the sentiments that Dilshad Apu, Tanim Bhai, and Snigdha Apu had already mentioned. I think a couple of things, like if I try to scope this down, I think the pandemic has been, like we never prepared for a pandemic, and we never prepared for it to stay this long, right? So I think any adjustments, anything that we've tried to, any shifts and tweaks that we tried to make was just to survive an extra month. We really didn't plan for a 2-year plus pandemic. So I think like a lot of the lessons learned or what we're trying to do is we're still trying to figure it out. So I would like to acknowledge that first, because I don't think we really have a hack for here are some policies that might work, because it's just been constant firefighting for, I would like to say, everyone in terms of policymakers or just anyone who's taking decisions at the workplace. Similar to how most companies approached it, I think that's just a very similar take that Amazon's taken as well, right? Like, I can't speak to policies per se, but we've experienced more flexible work hours, or more than work hours, just more flexible work styles, right? Like it's not a 9-to-5 anymore. So I think that's something that has really helped both men and women at the workplace, because if the pandemic's taught anything to all of us, it is the importance of shared responsibilities. Because I don't think parenting is more heavily weighed on females versus males anymore. It is a shared responsibility. So having more flexibility in the work, how individuals choose to work, patterns of work, is definitely something that has been super helpful. I think that is the primary part that we've all been trying to kind of hone in on and try to figure out. We're still trying to crack the formula for like, what does hybrid workplace look like? Or is this what's going to be the new tomorrow? So we haven't quite figured it out, but I think we're slowly getting there. In terms of just struggles and like some of the key themes that we've seen people being challenged with is childcare. Like individuals, I think every parent, I'm not a parent yet, but every parent, like going through the struggles of childcare availability is something that we've seen like at a large scale. But then again, there have been other individuals, like outside of the parent population. There are also a lot of individuals who are joining the workforce for the first time, right? Like fresh college graduates, females in that subset, right? Like they're predominantly, we're small in numbers. So when you see a small in number cohort arrive at work, it's often harder for them to onboard and get their voice across. So I think that's something that we've seen a predominant challenge. That's been a big challenge of the workforce. Like how are we onboarding our females, right? And how because it's expecting independence from individuals who are just entering the workforce for the first time. So really trying to figure out a safer space for how we help women on board is something that we're exploring. I think that would be the one different thing that I'd call out apart from what's being discussed. But overall, I think that's just been primarily some of the key focuses. I'm sure I'm missing some things, but I'm sure that's also going to be covered. I'm happy to double tap, double click, or answer any questions that anyone's curious about towards the end of the session.
Thank you so much, Sarah. Yes, most of the companies are still figuring out how to actually incorporate these changes, how to, introduce the, newbies and in the companies and the company culture. And also it is of course difficult for newcomers in the industry. While you are working from home and during the pandemic, lots of challenges, lots of dimensions, and specifically, of course, for the women. And it is good news for all of us that companies are actually working on that, figuring that out, how to actually make that easier for the female employees. Thank you. Next, we have Farah Farzana. Farah Farzana, the floor is yours. Please go ahead and share your perspective and thoughts.
Thank you so much, Noreen, and thanks to Spreeha for inviting me over. Really excited to be here and to talk about this very timely topic. So as the others said, like I agree with all of the comments, and Dilshad right before me talked a lot about the Microsoft policies and the benefits, so I will not be repeating that. So I'll take a little bit of a different stance here in the sense that we being working in these big tech companies, we do have a lot of the privileges that many women out there don't have. Like before the pandemic, the whole trend to resolve the gender equity in the workforce, it was trending in the right direction. Slowly but steadily, right? We were closing the gap and more women were entering the workforce each year and whatnot. But we kind of took a major setback because of this pandemic. We, as in the collective, we, like the women, all women have been impacted more or less. I mean, everybody has been impacted, not women, but all people have been impacted more or less. But working mothers have experienced some of the larger and largest challenges here. Few reasons, like women are highly concentrated in like some of the sectors that are expected to suffer during these times of the pandemic, like hospitality, food services, retail. Those women have really suffered. Just as Snigdha was saying, right, in like the third world countries or the developing countries, it's been more of a challenge. Even here in the first world country, US mothers with young children have reduced their work hours at a rate that is much higher than fathers to take on childcare, homeschooling, household responsibilities, and so on. And just to kind of also focus on how do we get back on track, that might not be as easy as we think even after the pandemic is gone one day, right? The women who are no longer in the workforce will need to reskill, will need to come back and kind of bridge that gap again to be back in the workforce. So those are the kinds of things that will be a challenge for the women for the foreseeable future to kind of, again, close that gap and kind of come back to the workforce. Going back to some of the experiences, I will share some of my personal experiences of members of my team who are struggling with the pandemic and how we dealt with it at Microsoft. And as I said, they did have the privilege of these flexible work hours and all the benefits that Microsoft had to offer. Back in 2020, I had a direct report, like a woman with 4 really young children. School was remote. Schools were learning how to do remote because schools themselves didn't know how to run properly in the remote environment. The kids were learning how to do school remotely. We were learning how to work remotely. So it was a lot of learning coming together at the same time. And with the flexible work options, she was able to kind of work for half a day every day, just so that she could share some of the tutoring responsibilities with her spouse for the other half of the day. And she did have the flexibility that she needed to do that. As I mentioned, not every woman with similar situations had that luxury, and they had to quit the workforce in many cases, right? Also, at one point in time, just kind of to counterbalance, a male member in my team also had to fly back home to India to take care of sick family. family sick with COVID. And for 4 months, he had to work remotely from India. And at a single point in time, just in my team, I had members working across 5 different time zones, like 5 time zones, and we thrived. We make it work. We made it through, and we had to rethink how meetings had to be done, how to be inclusive, yet not overburden employees with meetings at odd hours or whatnot. So we learned from those experiences, and those learnings are here to stay. And we will be able to accommodate these situations better in future. So it's every cloud has a silver lining, and we kind of learn through all these experiences to just to work better together and to be more inclusive of different situations, I would say. With that, I would like to give it to the next speaker. And if there are questions, I'll be happy to answer them at the end.
Thank you so much, Farabu. Yeah, it was really very informative speech actually from you. And yeah, definitely we will discuss more on this in our open discussion session. And I hope we will get some questions in that session as well. Okay, last but not the least, in our panelists, we have Michael Chalve. Over to you, Michael.
Thank you. And thank you for inviting me for the opportunity to talk here and share some experiences from my role. Definitely also here to learn and already seen some really great points in the discussion so far that I intend to bring back to my role as a manager. And so these past 2 years have really been a fully immersive and extended learning experience for everyone. And I have seen some good things here and there. It's been interesting opportunity to get to know the homes and children of the people we work with. And despite being all digital and all remote, we have sort of got new insights into the people outside of the office, including life interruptions like kids stopping by for a question or a delivery at the door. So there are certainly parts of this that I have really appreciated in terms of the extended work from home period. I've loved being able to hang out and spend some extra time with my wife, but I also miss being with people I work with. So as we're sort of gradually transitioning into whatever the new normal with some more time back in the office and this hybrid model, this hybrid mode, I think it has raised a few things for remote teams, and teams that are, say, outside of headquarters. It has been a bit of an equalizer. More people understand the situation of people working remotely. I've really noticed actually quite early on that more people were turning on their cameras than what we had sort of traditionally done before. I've also seen a lot of, from a technology point of view, a lot of new features coming out very quickly, much more rapidly than you typically see on Zoom and Teams and others. Better video integration, reaction, options to raise their hand, which actually has been a really good equalizer. People who don't necessarily as intuitively speak out in a room full of people, just having that raise hand option. I've even seen that used now for in-person meetings, where people are logged in and sort of raise their hand even though they're in the meeting, as well as parallel conversations in chat as we have here as well as an option. And so it just reminds me of how would this have been if this had happened 10 years ago. So I think technology has helped us to a large degree. But alongside with that comes extended work hours, simply not really have any breaks between meetings. Sort of you stop a meeting at the top of the hour and you shift right into the next meeting. So that has been a challenge, just context switching. And so with that, there is the obvious risk of burnout, and just being aware of that and seeing how that has impacted mothers in particular and women broadly is something to be very much aware of and being able to adjust appropriately. So some of the policies that have been implemented around flexible work hours, flexible work locations, I think have been a very positive step in the right direction. There's a lot more we need to do, and I think it's really a question of listening to feedback, creating a safe space in the work environment where people feel comfortable sharing concerns, sharing ideas, sharing what works for them and what doesn't, and be flexible around implementing some solutions that work for everyone. So from my point of view as a manager, I feel it's important to be able to create that environment where everybody can thrive. It's also true, we've seen several studies have shown that women have had to leave the workforce far more than men over the past 2 years here. So even the small advances we've seen and done towards a more gender balanced workforce, we've sort of in some places taken steps back, like a decade or 2 decades back. Also, Snigdha, you mentioned, as you raised it as a question, will this new world, this new hybrid where there's more work from home, will that create more obstacles for upwards mobility for women? And we may have some intuition, starting to get some data points, but I think the first step is exactly that. It's to ask the question, and then be aware of that, notice that, and then and so provide the appropriate flexibility and changes, policy changes that that need to come in place to counter that. So yeah, those are sort of the key points, in addition to all the other good discussions we had so far.
Thank you, Michael. Wow. So, yep, it is really great to hear the both side of the stories. We have challenges, and also there are definitely some positive sides of these work from home scenarios as well. Yep, thank you all for sharing your thoughts and experiences and the stories with us. Okay, so let's now start our open discussion session. If you have any question, please feel free to ask to any of our speakers here who are present, and we can definitely discuss on any topic that might be helpful for women to thrive in their career, and also that may help in their professional growth.
I would like to just add one thing, that we will not get this many talents in one place that frequently. So this is our opportunity to ask all sorts of questions. So anyone would have any questions?
If no one has question, I can probably ask one question.
Yeah, please, Shahina.
Sure.
So I will probably ask this question to Tanim Bhai. So you mentioned that this like asynchronicity, and that is working super well, like especially in this pandemic era when we are all working from home, right? In this case, one positive thing is that all the men's and women's, they're all working from home. So we are all kind of like, you know, following the same pattern. So no one is on site, and no one is being able to have those closed group meetings and stuff like that, which requires people to be present in the core business hours, right? In tech industries, we never had 9 to 5 sort of fixed hours anyway, but we do have some kind of core business hours when we think that all our meetings should be. And since we are going back to the office now, how this asynchronous model will work? I mean, I feel that now women have flexibility to be working asynchronously, but in a way it can penalize the woman, because you think that you have the option and you will follow that model, but at the end, maybe the people who doesn't have to be, you know, working asynchronously, they will have more benefit over the women who are taking this option. So how do you think that this will work, and how can we solve this?
I really can't predict it, but I'm an optimistic person. I hope that these learnings will stay, right? You know, I'm sure, like in back of my mind, you know, will men become men again? I don't know. I hope that this will continue to have it. And I just wanted to kind of encouraged to think these things through a little bit differently. I think one of the point that I was trying to make is like asynchronous does not only mean that I will work different hours. So there are several different ways to implement it. Actually, one of my colleague who is a male, he implemented it in a very different way. And, he had some struggle with his health and his family members' health. So he decided to kind of shift responsibility. His wife will take a couple days, weeks off, and then he will take a few weeks off. So he took a project and he says, like, this is what I'm going to do. Before I go on asynchronous mode, I'm going to spend 3 days to make sure my design is reviewed. Everybody is okay with it. And for 7 days, I'm not going to talk to you guys. So, and after 7 days, he came back and said, this is what we did. Previously, I think it would be a very different concept. Like, what do you mean by that you will not show up for 7 days? But I think it was very acceptable. And he tried it and it worked out. Now, some of my senior engineers are saying that, hey, I have been willing to work on this particular topic and I get randomized, I cannot do it. I'm going to take a asynchronous sprint. It means this particular sprint, you will not see me. I'll come back end of the sprint, I'll show you what I did. And I think like it started a few things. And at the end of the day, we're going to do things that works. We're all part of corporate world, things that works and benefits our company. We're going to do it, and we're seeing benefit. We're seeing a significant productivity and job satisfaction. People who are able to take kind of an asynchronous sprint, we're definitely seeing a lot more engaged when they come back, and it definitely helped. I think someone mentioned that this whole moving from one meeting to another meeting to another meeting. And I hear there is a lot of managers here. We are glorified Outlook engineers. So we do a bunch of email, then go to a meeting, and then we do all those things in there. And it does take a toll. So being able to disconnect, being able to do that is very helpful. But I'm kind of sidelined your question. I really don't know whether this will continue to change or not. I hope it's not. And we all need to be aware so that it doesn't happen.
Yeah, that's the wish. Hope that.
Yeah, because there is a trap we can fall into and like revert back to the original behavior when we had the option, and many people start going. So it's lots of on the management side as well. We are trying to do like saying, hey, Teams is still the default mode of like meeting, so you have to be inclusive so everybody can participate at the same way. Even one of our VP says, oh, I'm gonna stay fully work from home, even the office is open. So that also gives us set some boundaries, like, okay, it's okay to do that. So people don't feel, oh, if I work from home, I'm not gonna get enough reward or promoted or things like that. So that's actually setting a good kind of examples, like even if VPs are doing it, you can also do it and be successful, as long as Tanim is saying, how you adjust your work style.
The other thing that I will tap in is, recognize your power as well. I think it's super important. The part that I mentioned, the colleague that I described before, she didn't ask for permission. And I think that's where she was different. Many people will struggle on this for many reasons. We all know that. But if you kind of start putting your worth and say, this is what I will do, and for this is what I need, I think it will drive conversation. We need to recognize the fact that breaking the bias needs to start from both sides, and one of those things is we all need to learn how to not ask for permission for doing the right thing.
Yep.
Thanks. Snigdha, you had your hand raised. Do you have anything here?
It's kind of a combination of a question and a comment. I understand that today's topic was about sharing our own stories and stuff, but I would really, really urge people to be mindful of the fact that the realities are vastly different. Even when we are talking about the leveling field, or some positive sides and breaking barriers and etc. Even if we just think about a primary school teacher in Bangladesh who has been a female school teacher in Bangladesh, who has been forced to work from home or teach from home, if that is the case, she faces numerous different challenges than us. I mean, we are a very privileged group of people. We live in Seattle. We are in corporate environment. We have internet, high speed, all devices, even space to work from. But when those resource competition comes into play, usually women lose out everywhere. And just before the pandemic, women were 1.8 times more likely to lose jobs. So I'm just wondering what it will be after the pandemic, during and after. But that's all. Thank you.
Totally agree with your point, Snigdha. I mean, yes, we are in a very privileged position to be talking about what benefits the pandemic is bringing to our working culture and whatnot, but there are women who are not in this position. And it will take years for them to go back to where they were, if ever.
And
So,
the data that Snigdha you pointed out is mind-boggling, how the workload has like 2% versus 60%. I had no idea that the workload has increased this much for women. So it was just mind-boggling.
It may not be the same scenario for Western societies, but that's what I'm trying to say, that different contexts has its own challenges. But I agree with some of the panelists when you say that awareness has risen up. Of course, men may not have realized it before. Now they understand the struggle that their women partners face. So the awareness has risen, but how much and in what proportion, and especially in other societies, not Western. So
we have Aparajita made a note. The second, Tanim Pai, I think being bold is the key to establish your opinion. So being bold.
It's a great discussion, and I'm looking at that time, and we're always at time, almost at time. But just wanted to take a quick opportunity here to just say thank you, everyone, for this awesome discussion. Because there's so much to know. You all say that, but what is important is you guys as industry leaders. If you initiate the changes, and then the other companies and corporates follow. And that will kind of like push the ultimate policymakers in the state level or maybe national level. Only then a slight change of change can be seen in the marginal level, because it's really easy to make changes in the upper level, but it really more difficult the more you dig in, as Snigdha was saying, that the resource problem is a thing. Like, you work from home from where? Because I had to change my apartment to make a space for myself to work, because I didn't plan this. I didn't plan working from home. And there's so many other women like that. So I was curious to discuss a little more about how, as a just an individual, I can impact on this policy changes, maybe in the state or government level. But that's probably another big topic to discuss some other days. But that's something I just wanted to bring up so that we all can remember this in our workspaces, so that whenever we're thinking of making changes, we kind of like see the bigger picture, not like the first level only. But thank you anyways.
I would like to just point out a few things. I mean, my learning from this discussion, some really good points that came up. Asynchronous model that has been working out, and then Sarah mentioned that companies are still figuring out. That's important because there is awareness. That's that. And then also, like what Dilshad mentioned, that we're all in the same page. So that has never happened before. Like, men and women are facing the same crisis. So that's a big learning for, at least for me, is like, okay, so that's true. I mean, we are all on the same page. Farah mentioned one thing that was really striking, that you have team members from 5 different zones. And if that can be figured out, I think women, I mean, just men and women, 2 genders or multiple genders, that can easily be figured out. That's the hope that I take with me. I don't know what you all think.
I just Rocio, I
Rocio,
just wanted to point out, I mean, last year there were some numbers that also the perception of the pandemic, if you're a man or a woman, is a little bit different. For example, 79% of men found that it was a positive experience to work from home, while only 37% of women thought it was positive. And they don't say anything if they're parents or anything like that. But yeah, the perception also, as they have to be that awareness.
I'd be curious to know what the answer is. If this is a survey last year, I'd be curious to know what the answer is now. Because I do think that people have, like, we've really struggled working from home, like during the start of the pandemic. And I think struggle that we're seeing now is going back to the office, right? Like, so I'd just be very curious to understand if there is a shift in any of those percentages if we took the survey today.
I'd say that events and discussions, conversations like these are really something that helps in terms of raising awareness and sharing ideas of what works and what doesn't. And I've definitely learned some things here today, and then we can sort of each of us bring that back to those lessons learned back to our communities and see where we can make tweaks and adjustments here and there to continue improving the conditions and the policies we put in place around our teams.
Thank you, Spreeha, for making this learning opportunity possible.
And thanks to our speakers and panelists for your valuable thoughts and expertise. We really learned and we were inspired. There's hope. I mean, this is a struggling time, but I'll let Noreen take over, and then we are probably close to time, and then we can go from there.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, thank you all for joining us today. Thank you, the speakers and the panelists, and also the audiences. And also for taking, thanks for taking part in our discussion actively. And definitely we see some hopes that companies are making and addressing the issues. They are realizing the issues, they're realizing the struggles, of course. And I also want to add that the flexibility that we all already discussed, that it really varies from industry to industry. Like, I'm in civil engineering industry, and my flexibility is not like the tech industry, of course. I really have to maintain that 8 to 5 working hours, and I have to meet the state and county and other policymakers, and I have to respect their time, because it's not within only in my company, but also with the state governments, with the counties, and so many things. So yeah, this is still we are learning, and when we will go back to the hybrid situation, there will be, I'm sure there will be new challenges. And definitely I thank Spreeha for arranging this discussion, and I'm looking forward to have more, because definitely I see there are lots of questions still people want to ask and want to know from the leaders. And yeah, thanks for joining us today.